favorite youth sports memory. Probably playing for my dad. And I say this now because when I was that age, and you're dads, you have daughters, like you feel me, right? You have kids. We battled. Oh my gosh, like did we battle? But yeah, some of my gosh, and we just went and moved my parents out finally the house I grew up in. And you guys, like I mean, my dad was a head baseball coach at a college. So like when I say he was our coach, like it was like serious. Like we had to lift weights before dinner, batting practice every night before, whatever time we could get it in. He made, so we didn't have a lot of money. He made like literally from like PVC pipe and this like netting, this like, basically a backstop so he could pitch to us behind it and we wouldn't kill him, and we would throw it on top of our car and we'd hang out the windows to like hold on to it and then drive down the road. And when we were moving my parents out, I went to that park that I mean, I can't, we're talking thousands of hours of batting practice and ground balls. And I mean, you know how it is when you're a kid, it just seems like this vast, huge field. And really all it is, it's just a tiny little backstop. It's still there, just off one of those awful grass, like growing every which way and giant potholes. But oh my gosh, the memories of that field with my dad and my sister and him just spending countless hours like batting practice, and we'd rotate, and he would have different colored balls for different pitches. And we're like, I'm not even kidding, like 6 years old, 7 years old, and we're learning how to hit changeups and different locations based on like where the ball was. I mean, he was next level. But that's my favorite memory for sure, is playing for my dad, and just those family memories.
Wow. So when did you realize, was it 6 years old, or when did you realize you were pretty good at sports? Like when did you kind of say, hey, I'm better than my peers, and this is kind of something that I take pride in?
Yeah, Brad, that took some time. I was never super, like I was never that super athlete, the one that, stood out. From a young age, I needed the help. That's why, I'm so grateful to my dad, because my little sister, like she was a natural stud, like smooth hands, just had that ability. I always tell kids, like I look like Bambi. Just I had really long, uncontrollable legs, like was just super uncoordinated. And I would say honestly it wasn't until like college. I mean, that's what's insane. And that's why, my heart hurts for like early commits and like all this pressure now to like pick where you're going to go to school early, because for me, like that wasn't an option. I wasn't that good. I had to learn, I had to grow into my body, I had to get stronger, I had to understand my strengths. But I always had the work ethic. And to be honest, Brad, like I was so blessed to not have right away talent, because it always gave me that humility that I feel like I still have now, where I would call it humility slash insecurity, where I was like, am I good enough? Like I have to get better. Like I got to go get after it. I got to go run. I got to go, lift weights. I got to go like work on hitting that darn low outside pitch that I struggle with. Like all those things allowed me, then when the talent did catch up, the work ethic was already there, and it was kind of a perfect meeting of the two for sure.
So, Jessica, that's really fascinating because we talk to a lot of very accomplished athletes like yourself on this podcast, and frankly, most of them were the stars from the time they began. So, and that's a lot of kids who are watching this they don't have that story. But I think what I hear from you is, you might say, don't give up hope that you can still accomplish a lot, even if you're not a star at 8 years old.
No, and I think that's a benefit, to be honest. I'm happy that my kids aren't, even watching them play sports, you want them to have success, I guess, but I'm glad like when they fail sometimes, because it gives them immediate humility. Like, remember we were talking about, we need to go practice. Like I always saw so many of my teammates that were definitely the best athletes. Rarely did they put in the extra work. And that to me is a gift that I feel like I had, but I also was blessed with a coach as a father, even though I would never have called it a blessing growing up. But, I also had someone that consistently could work on my skills and my craft, and finally get me to a point. He even, I mean, honestly, as a left-handed hitter, sorry, I'm like, I want to tangent this because, and I don't mean to go totally in the other direction, but like even when we were like little kids, like babies, he wanted to figure out what eye we were dominant. So my sister and I, he realized we were right eye dominant, and because he was a switch hitter, he had us hitting from the left side from like 2 years old on, because he always felt like whatever eye was dominant, you want that to be closer to the pitcher. This is like the family, to give you some insight that I grew up in. But when I, struggled to really get those levers and figure out, because again, I was just long arms, long limbs, he turned me into a slapper early on, even though he didn't even know that part of the game. But in softball, you had that option. So he just taught me, like, because I had speed, he's like, just put the ball in play. So he had me bunting and just literally slapping those early years just to like get my confidence going. And honestly, just hand-eye coordination, a little pepper, right? And then that allowed me, once I became a power hitter, to have like both, to be able to do both.
We need to get your dad to give a lesson to the big leagues these days of putting the ball in play.
Yes, that was always number one. You could not strike out.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, so you said you played basketball. So what was your little leagues? You did softball, basketball, fill us in on that kind of.
A lot of soccer. I did travel soccer also. And I loved that sport. My dad hated it though. He was always like, I don't know if that's just an old school baseball thing, but he was always like rarely came to my soccer games. I was like, no, I'm good. He's like, that sport, it's awful. Just always badmouthed it. But I love soccer too. I was really into snowboarding. I still am. Always wanted to be a pro snowboarder, and it was right when we started to see women snowboarding in the Olympics, and it was something that inspired me, but my parents thought I was going to be a druggie or something if I ended up being a full-time snowboarder, so they wouldn't let me do like the Mount Hood camps in the summer and things like that. So that I was big into that. Surfing, growing up in Southern California, my brother was a surfer, so I spent a lot of time in the ocean. Pretty much every morning before school, getting up, get out in the ocean, and then go to school, which was really cool. I still have that love, but yeah, all the sports, track and field. That was like I was a big high jumper in the 200 meters in track. But that's why I encourage so many kids. I'm like, do it all, because then you don't know, and they all helped me in my other sports. It's the perfect kind of cross training. I tell people, my explosiveness for my legs as a power hitter came from basketball. Like I remember the feeling of just wanting to get up for rebounds and having to utilize those muscles to really find power, especially being a shorter forward. And I remember when that clicked for me as a hitter. It was like, oh, those muscles. And I became from a slapper that's just trying to put the ball in play to hitting home runs because of that cross training and playing other sports.